I guess I'll never get to see my score, so hopefully it's okay. Hey everyone, my name is Janet, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the CASPer test. CASPer stands for Computer-Based Assessment for Sampling Personal Characteristics. That's a pretty vague name. I think in general it's used for schools that want to gain a little more information about their applicants in regard to their ethical reasoning, moral judgment, communication skills, empathy, those sort of characteristics that you might not be able to glean from a personal statement or just like a transcript. And so a lot of professional schools are requiring it, such as medical schools, dental schools, nursing schools, PA schools, all across the board. People are requiring this test, and it was started or created in 2005 by researchers at McMaster University and has been required by more and more schools ever since. I just wanted to go over today some of the sources that I found extremely helpful in my own preparation for this test, study tips, can you even study for an ethical reasoning test, that kind of dilemma, and also like just logistically, like what is the format of it, how much does it cost, etc. And all of the sources that I used to formulate what I wanted to talk about today, I will try to pop up here. I'm not very good at technology, so hopefully I can figure it out, but I will also link everything that I talk about and every source that I use in the description box, so hopefully it'll help someone out there who's also a little nervous about this test. You just sign up on the official website, which I will link here and in the description box, and it will cost $12 for you as like a base fee, and then for every school you want to apply to that requires CASPer, you'll pay an additional $12 fee. And you can get all of this covered if you qualify for the fee assistance programs, and for that I think you'd have to look more specifically into your program to see if you're eligible for that. Regarding the format, it's a 90-minute test that has 12 sections with an optional 15-minute break in the middle. So thankfully it's a lot shorter than the MCAT and the DAT if any of you guys are taking those. It's 12 sections, and each section will present with you either a video or a word-based question. And after you watch the video or read through the question, you'll be given 5 minutes to answer 3 questions about that specific scenario. This is not a lot of time per question, and I have seen floating around on the internet people struggling with the time and being able to type out their full thoughts. If in the case that you are not really accustomed to typing very quickly, it may be in your interest to take some typing tests and try to get your speed up to around 50 words per minute, just because you want to be able to at least formulate cohesive and coherent thought given the time frame that you are. And so it is very difficult to do that when you simply just aren't used to the typing speed required. And so that might be something to consider when you're preparing for the exam. Another thing to consider is how it's graded. So from the information that's been released and the sources that I've linked down below, especially I would recommend listening to the Premed Years Podcast episode where Dr. Ryan Gray interviews one of the researchers who developed the CASPer exam. How it's graded is that you'll have a different grader assigned to each of your different 12 scenarios, and that grader can be anywhere from an elementary school teacher, middle school teacher, I don't know why I keep saying teachers, that it could be, a university student or a retired professor, or, it could be anyone from all walks of life. And they'll be assigned your scenario after they've gone through training on how to assess these responses that they get, and you'll be given a numerical score, and they're also given the option if they see anything that they would consider a red flag or extremely unethical to kind of make a comment. And so that way the larger system set in place will be able to be aware of everything when determining your final score. And you'll be assigned more than one grader per scenario, and every time you submit an answer, it'll be delivered to them and they will be able to see your answer to all 3 questions for each scenario. So if you don't have time to answer the very last question because you had a really thoughtful answer for question number 1 and you simply ran out of time, that's okay. Take a deep breath and just keep moving on, because they'll still be able to assess your moral judgment, ethical reasoning ability from your first 2 answers that hopefully you've been able to, say all that you wanted to in those, even if you weren't able to in the last one. And the different types of questions you might have are video-based questions or word-based questions. And the video-based questions will oftentimes put you in a scenario where you're asked to take on the role of a coworker, a teacher, a parent, a fellow classmate, maybe a best friend, any sort of role imaginable. I've seen questions where they ask you to pretend to be a basketball coach, and you just kind of imagine yourself in that position and try to answer with how you would deal with that specific scenario that you're put in as a teacher. Should you allow your students to use cell phones? That's an example. It could really be anything. You could be put in the role of a future physician too. And so it's not necessarily healthcare based, but I think the ability to kind of make rational judgments and logical, reasonable assessments based on the information that you're given is really an important characteristic that they need future healthcare workers to have, and I think that's why so many of these programs are requiring it. Lastly, I just wanted to kind of go over a general outline of how to answer a CASPer question. Oh, and before I do that, the word-based questions might ask you to give an example of when you personally faced an ethical dilemma or had to make a tough situation. And so in preparation for this exam, not only should you double check your internet bandwidth, your typing speed, but also kind of have a little bit of time of self-reflection and ask yourself, when did I have to make a tough decision? How did I handle it? Is there anything I would have done differently if I could go back in time? And not only should you ask yourself when you face a tough decision, but also consider other dilemmas that they might ask you about, such as when did you have to make a sacrifice for something that you considered really important to you, and how did it make you feel? It might be something like, describe a time when you received constructive feedback and how did you respond? So, it could really be anything. And so it's important to take the time to not only prepare for these hypothetical scenarios, but actually look back at your life and think, when did I experience failure? When did I have a challenge in my life that was difficult to handle? And how would I have done things differently? Or how did I do things well? And so I think those are the key. But to answer any sort of CASPer question in general, I got this sort of outline by combining all my sources and what they suggested on how to approach this exam. And obviously there's never going to be like one correct answer. So the best that you can do is kind of, use your own rational judgment to make a decision, and that should be completely fine. So my outline is to, number 1, read all the questions and answer the easiest first. I think because you're only given 5 minutes, you don't really have time to sit there on the very first question if that turns out to be the most difficult, trying to think of an answer when you could have easily answered number 3 and then moved on. And then number 2, I would identify the most pressing issue. This is usually concerning the well-being of whoever is their health or emotional stability is at risk here. And then, address that, like, my priority is the well-being of XYZ, and in order to prioritize this, I would suggest that my friend, gain some more information about XYZ, and then you can say, and then I would ABC. Number 3, I would always try to remain non-judgmental in every situation. Oftentimes they won't give you enough information to make a clear decision, and so in your response you can very well be like, I would ask for more information about ABC to decide DEF what I would do. And that's perfectly fine, and I think that's expected. You shouldn't jump to rash conclusions that aren't supported by the information that you're given. And then number 4, this kind of ties into what I just said, gather all the facts and ask any questions, never make assumptions. And then number 5, you should always identify who's directly involved and, if necessary, who's indirectly involved. And then number 6, if you run out of things to say or you don't know where to start, I would suggest using the if-then sentence structures, because that gives you a lot of room to say a lot of different alternative responses to the same question, showing that, you're considering the possibility that it might not just turn out A leads to B leads to C. It might be D to E to F, or who knows, like X to A to F. Things could not always go as planned, and without all the information, it's really hard to make a clear decision. And so if you say, if this, then that, and then alternatively, if this happens, then I would do this instead, it shows the score that you're able to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of different possibilities. To remain non-judgmental and open-minded is really important. So for practice exams, I would suggest this book that I'm going to put here, the 2 CASPer exams that they offer on their website as of May 2020, and also this other link that has a few practice questions. I don't really think it's necessary to keep on doing it over and over again from past research studies, which I will have sourced in the description box below and here if I ever learn how to pop things up. You won't have a huge increase in your score, but they did show that, with at least one practice test, that there was a slight improvement. And so I think for these characteristics that are very hard to judge quantitatively, this is an approach that I think is very interesting. And the fact that more and more schools are using it shows that, they consider it something important. So it's not something to be taken lightly. I took my CASPer test, so I'm really glad that that's out of the way, and I just kind of wanted to share with you guys my reaction to it. It was pretty much what I thought it would be like. After taking the practice test online and running through questions on my own, I feel like I had a good idea of what to expect. Something that was a little different was after each scenario, I got 30 seconds of time to kind of think about what I wanted to say or important things that I wanted to be sure to address in my answer. And I think that might have been changed because instead of a 15-minute break, it was only 10 minutes. And so I think they took the extra 5 minutes and distributed it out and gave you 30 seconds after each question was presented. And that was actually really helpful because you get time to kind of breathe and think about the question, because I know a lot of times in actual interviews, you might ask the person who's interviewing you if you can have a little bit of time to think before you respond, and that kind of gives you that time on this test. Other than that, I would say it is really hard to prepare for something like this. I think just kind of understanding what the format is and knowing what to expect will still be helpful in a way so that you're not caught by surprise during the exam or anything like that. And overall, I'm just really glad it's done with, and I guess I'll never get to see my score, so hopefully it's okay, but we'll see. And if you guys want me to share anything else about the exam or anything else about my own pre-med path, feel free to leave a comment below or message me. I'll include links to contact me in the description box. I don't know how many people this will help, but hopefully at least one other person out there will find this useful. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later. I'm gonna go relax now. Bye!